Okay, welcome to the American Liberties call. And this will probably be the last call for the year. And we're so close to Christmas. And I would ask that everybody mute themselves out except for me and me. And that way we won't get any background noise. And if I hear some background noise, I can see where it's coming from. And of course, I will mute yourself out as the guest speaker is speaking. The uh, I got a couple issues that are happening. Like many of us do. And one of the things that the government is always coming after, especially, my main thing is the IRS, of course. And one of the main things that the IRS looks for is one, are you a U.S. citizen? And two, you're a taxpayer because you are a U.S. citizen. The presumption is that you are a U.S. citizen. Plain and simple, cut and dry. You can live in New York, you can live in Key West, you can live in France, you can live in wherever. Okay, if they're deemed to be a U.S. citizen, then you are a taxpayer, plain and simple. Now, they go after people like me and many others over the years because they want to try to say that we're getting in their way of teaching people that, giving false and fraudulent representation that United States citizens are not required to pay income tax returns or pay income tax. And that is a true statement. If you are talking to typical people that the IRS does not apply to them, and yet they deem themselves to be U.S. citizens, you're banging your head against the wall. I would recommend you wear a helmet, okay? Because
You'll show us in a minute.
it'll be easier on your head.
I'm
And
working on that.
all right, let me go ahead and mute that out. Okay, and so the you gotta, people gotta break their presumptions, which is, a call that we had years ago. Breaking Your Presumption was a great series because even back in the late 70s and early 80s, we found that is to be the key, breaking your presumption before you can handle other people's presumptions. You got to know who you are, where you stand. And I'm not going to say everybody else is crazy for believing what they believe. You can believe what you want to believe. I don't know anybody, and believe me, I'm not bragging. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything like that. I'm the only one that I know of that stood in front of a grand jury and did not get convicted, did not even go to trial and put the judge down on one issue and one issue only. And that basically was, I can't answer any questions. I can't even talk to you until you prove on the record that jurisdiction exists. Because all offices of the seat of the government shall be exercised in the District of Columbia and not elsewhere unless expressly, pretty strong language, expressly provided by law. So I want to know where the law is. I'm not arguing about the 16th Amendment. It's been proven that the 16th Amendment wasn't ratified properly and the court just ignored it. The courts are going to ignore everything except one issue, jurisdiction. If you don't give them jurisdiction on the onset, you're most favorable that your winning is going to be an outcome. If you give them jurisdiction and then fight jurisdiction, like like, for instance, Richard Boggs did. It's going to be a sad story, you know. He's in prison, but I think we're working on a habeas corpus, and I'm telling you, man, it's beautiful. I can't wait to send it. But if it works, great. I'm telling you, I hope it does, because I know some other people are just waiting anxiously, like I am, to see if it does work. Now, with that being said, all offices of seat of the government shall be exercised in D.C. Well, D.C. is the United States. And recently, this past week, I was watching a video that somebody sent me, and I was listening to this guy, and this guy, his name is Glenn, and I'm listening, and I've watched that about 2 or 3 times. I thought it was a great video. I think it's video number 27 or 28. I sent it out to my email list. And if you hear by somebody telling you to be here and you want a link to my email list to get on it, by all means, you're more than welcome. You'll get advertisements about Quicksilver, because I'm a strong believer that America should all get back to silver and gold. And if you don't, you don't. You can play around with Federal Reserve notes. But I can tell you, everybody that is getting in loves to receive real money in the mail. Absolutely loves it. So I watched this video, and in his video, he had several things he's talking about. But one of them is right here. Now, we all know that taxes are commercial. And what I didn't know, and what he taught me, or what I learned from him, under Title 15, Code 4727, trade shows, the term United States business. Well, guess what? The first one on the item is the definition of a United States citizen. There you go, a United States citizen. So when you're talking about you're a United States citizen, are you the one that mentioned in this code? Are you the one that's mentioned in what code? And you go down here, and in the Ominous Act, you find where they change the definition of Alaska and Hawaii. And while the gentleman is talking, I'm just going to let it sit here, and you guys can read it and listen. But Glenn has a very extensive group, and I'm going to let him share that and give that information. So I'd like to introduce Glenn. I believe his last name is Fearn. And Glenn, go ahead and unmute yourself and take it away, please.
Okay, well, yeah, they always deny due process, and they don't have any authority. They don't follow their own codes. I mean, there's just all sorts of things. I use a lot of Randy Kelton stuff, but Randy Kelton has Rule of Law Radio, and he does he's strictly statutory, and I'm not strictly statutory. But you can use their own codes and break it off in their backside. I'm trying to keep this family friendly.
Thank you.
But they never follow their own codes. And there's court cases that talk about how a U.S. citizen was created by Congress. Well, the only thing Congress can create is corporations, and that's what I talk about in that video. I think he's talking, number 28 was, let me look here. I think that was, that's challenge jurisdiction. And so, that whole video, I've got a YouTube channel with over 500 videos, 560, I think. YouTube has actually taken it down twice. And both times they sent me an email and they said, we took your channel down. And if you have something to say, you can respond to this link. And so both times I respond the same way. Both times, well, the first time they didn't give me any strikes. They never took any of my videos down. They just took my channel down. The second time, they gave me 4 strikes, or no, they gave me 3 strikes, took 4 of my videos down, and then took my channel down. And I responded both times the same way. And I said, you're engaged in multiple felonies. You're violating my rights under the color of law, a felony. You're conspiring to threaten, coerce, injure, intimidate me in the free exercise of my rights, another felony. You're subjecting me to your satanic religious ceremony with your fear agenda and your forced medical experiment. That's a war crime. You're subjecting me to your war crimes agenda with your forced medical experiments and your fear agenda again. Forced medical experiments. Oh, taking reprisals against me for my political beliefs. So, and I said, I'm going to sue your butt off, and all your executive officers and board of directors are personally liable in their private capacity. And don't think I don't know what to do because I've been to the U.S. Supreme Court 5 times. You're next. And 15 minutes later, my channel's back up. It's amazing how that works. Both times it happened that way. And now I have, if you look in my videos, in the show notes, at the very top, it says Google and Alphabet and YouTube all want to get sued because they've taken my channel down twice. And so anyways, I've got a video that talks about what happened when they took my channel down. So anyways, they never follow their own codes. They always deny due process. And when they deny due process, they lose subject matter jurisdiction. And so that's what you hit on. And their codes, when they don't follow their own codes, their codes are meant to provide due process. So when they don't follow their own codes, that's a denial of due process. So anyways, that's what I essentially do is what I suggest in that video, which is I got the idea from Randy Kelton actually, is challenge to jurisdiction, and you don't even have to be on point. You just challenge it, because once you challenge it, they have to prove it, and they're not even going to try. And I don't care what kind of court case it is. They never, ever even try and prove jurisdiction. And so all you have to do is challenge it. And then, you know, sometimes, like there's one guy that I know that he filed a challenge to jurisdiction, and the judge, then he asked the judge about it, and the judge told him to sit down and shut up. Well, that's a perfect answer. that's what you want witnesses there for that one. And so because you could probably get his butt removed from that one. And but so you got to build a case. Okay, you're not going to do anything without building a case. If you're going to challenge jurisdiction, you can't do it in verbal. You know, there's a Harvard Law, I think it's Harvard Law School in the Northeast that has a over the top, an inscription over the top of the main entrance, and it says in Latin, it says your verbal contract is as good as the paper it's written on. And so you got to get it in writing. You got to have evidence. So you file something and you get their file stamps on it, and then you confront the judge and you have some witnesses there. Ideally, you don't necessarily have to have witnesses there, but ideally you have witnesses there to show that you brought up the issue of jurisdiction and the judge's response. And then you just file a petition for writ of mandamus with the Court of Appeals and ask the Court of Appeals to order them to prove jurisdiction, because they're required to prove it. And a mandamus, any mandamus, is asking a superior court to order an inferior court to do their job. Okay, it can be an inferior court, it can be a bureaucrat, it can be anybody, but where the court orders them to do their job. And so if you build a good case, and then the Court of Appeals will dismiss it for lack of jurisdiction and notify the lower court. And now you got them set up. You set them up, okay? Now you can really break it off in their backside by suing them all in their private capacity. You never, ever sue them in their official capacity. It's always got to be in their private capacity. And you sue their butt off. And and you can get them removed. Randy Kelton's in the process of suing some judges right now, in fact. But that's what you have to do, and they never ever follow their own codes, federal or state. I don't care which state you're in. I've never seen them follow their own codes. They always, it's like they screen their cops for low intelligence and a propensity for aggressive behavior, and they give them a gun and they tell them to go out and do things they're not authorized to do. So that's essentially what I do. And I don't just make statements in my videos. I show court case law. I show citations, and I kind of try and explain it, fill in the gaps, and show that they're not following their own codes. And
yeah, I'd like to interrupt. I will be putting out his videos along with his website where you can see it and everything, so you can see more. But I'm going to take a lot of his videos and share them with everybody on the list. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. And there's what I do normally is I'll send them a notice and demand. I'll set them up, and I'll send them a notice and demand. And it's, it started out about 8 pages back in like 2025 or 2005, around there is when I first started doing this. And it started out about 5 to 8 pages. And I'd say things like, I accept your oath of office. If you think you're representing me, you're fired. A bunch of boilerplate statements. And things like, I'm going to be traveling in your area and I don't have a driver's license. And explaining why that it's perfectly appropriate. And you're setting them up is what you're doing. Now, most of the time, very few of them ever responded to it. The smart ones didn't respond. But I did get, one time I got a letter from the Pennsylvania Attorney General. I was living up in New York. I was working for Atlas Airlines. I do aerospace engineering consulting. I helped design a hydraulic system on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. Anyways, so I was working up in New York for Atlas Airlines in White Plains, New York. And so I was sending them out to all the local attorney generals in that area that I might have to deal with. And I sent one to the Pennsylvania Attorney General, and one of his flunkies sent me a letter back and said, if you drive in Pennsylvania without a driver's license, we're going to arrest your butt and take you down and put you in jail. And so I went and attached that letter that they give with my letter that I sent, and I made a little criminal complaint for perjury of oath and treason and sedition and that kind of stuff. It was a short criminal complaint, maybe 2 or 3 pages. And I sent it to the U.S. Attorney in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And 2 weeks later, I get a letter back. We've referred this matter to the FBI. And then 6 months later, I'm looking on the Pennsylvania Attorney General's website, and they have an acting Attorney General. So, they never tell me what they're going to do or what happened because of what I did. But it's amazing how many times I do that kind of stuff, and all of a sudden people disappear. This started out when I was in 2007. I was working for U.S. Airways in Phoenix, and let's see what happened. I got the IRS. Actually, what happened is the IRS went and I had been filing exempt with the IRS, and the IRS started ordered U.S. Airways to start taking maximum withholdings out. So I sued the IRS and I sued U.S. Airways, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And I've been to the Supreme Court 5 times, like I said, and the Supreme Court can turn any case away they want. And it says right in their rules. And I always tell them, you have no right to turn this case away, and you have no right to tax me because I'm one of the people. And with this IRS case, I accused them of involuntary servitude. And so that's a felony. And it's slavery. You're forcing me to work for you for nothing. And every one of my cases, what happens is that I get a docketing letter, okay, and I know people that have had their cases turned away by the Supreme Court, and the case does not even get docketed. I've got docketing letters on every one of my cases. And so then you're supposed to serve the respondents with a docketing letter. And what happens is the respondents waive their right to respond. And
Yeah.
that takes away the controversy. And so then they dismiss the case. So anyways, what they did is they started taking out maximum withholding. So I left and I went to, that's when I started working on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program in Fort Worth, Texas.
Glenn, I want to ask you something so we don't go too far. When they didn't, they did that to me in my Supreme Court case. They didn't want to respond, and then the court just dismissed it. What does that mean? It doesn't mean I won anything.
Well, it's a hollow victory is what it is, because they're admitting everything. When they don't respond under the law with any court case, they're admitting everything. Okay, they're saying, okay, we know about that, so what? And so, but it takes away the controversy, and the Constitution says that you got to have a controversy. And so that's why they dismiss it, because there's no debate. You see what I'm saying? And
Okay.
so that's why that's so what happened with the IRS is they don't want to talk to me anymore, and I kind of like it that way. They don't ask and I don't tell. And and one time, like what I did was some friends of mine set up a trust, and then set up a limited liability company that was owned by the trust. And that's how I work. Like on classified military programs, I work through the limited liability company. And so the IRS doesn't get anything. The limited liability company gets the paychecks, and then I have a compensation for a labor contract with the limited liability company. Anyways, and it's a pass-through entity, so all it does is report. It's actually pretty slick how it's done. But so anyways, so nothing's ever reported. But one time I went in with the limited liability company. It files a schedule, a 1065 tax return, which is a partnership return. And there's a Schedule K associated with that. So the 1065 tax return basically says these were my income, these were my expenses, this is my net profit or loss. And then the Schedule K says these are the partners, and this partner owns this percentage, and this other partner owns this percentage. And so they get that percentage of profit or loss. And I used the wrong Schedule K. And so they went and they sent me a fine for $1,200 for not using the right Schedule K. But they said that if I use the right Schedule K, that they'll waive the fine. So all I had to do. And so I had to call them up and talk to them. And I told them my name, Glenn Winningham. I'm Glenn Winningham. Actually, my family name's Fearn, but my given names are Glenn Winningham. And so that's all you ever have to mention at common law. Anyways, so I told them who I was, and we talked about whatever needed to be talked about, and I did whatever they wanted me to do for the limited liability company as the manager, and everybody was happy. And so it's amazing how many. So during that whole process, though, I filed a $15 million commercial lien against the IRS and all the commissioners and deputy commissioners, and I filed criminal complaints against them. And George Bush Jr. had Mark Everson, who was the commissioner of the IRS at the time, on the White House lawn, saying it was the toughest job in the country when he left early. He left before his term was up. And I think that was part of what I was doing too. And so they had, after that, they had a Deborah Schulman, I think, was the commissioner. And so again, you have to know how this stuff works. Okay. In other words, the IRS is never, ever going to come after you except they go through the U.S. attorney. So if you set up the U.S. attorney and you let them know in certain terms that you're not a U.S. citizen, that you're one of the people, and that there's even a good court case that I've been using recently. It's McCullough versus Maryland, and it's really, it says it all. I'll just read it to you here because let me find it. I'm preparing a lawsuit right now. Anyways, it says This is 17 U.S. 316. Okay, that's like 1815. Says all subjects over which the sovereign power of a state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are, upon the soundest principles, exempt from taxation. This proposition may be almost be pronounced self-evident. The sovereignty of a state extends to everything which exists by its authority or is introduced by its permission, but it does not extend to those means which are employed by Congress to carry into execution powers conferred on that body by the people of the United States. We think it demonstrable. Oh no, it says, but does it extend to those means which are employed by Congress to carry into execution powers conferred on that body by the people of the United States? We think it demonstrable that it does not. Those powers are not given by the people of a single state. They are given by the people of the United States to a government whose laws, made in pursuance of the Constitution, are declared to be supreme. Consequently, the people of a single state cannot confer a sovereignty which will extend over them. And I mean, that nails it right there. Consequently, the people of a single state cannot confer a sovereignty which will extend over them. What they're doing is they're bringing the commerce, they're using the Commerce Clause to bring the District of Columbia. The Commerce Clause is Article 1, Section A, Clause 3, and they're bringing the District of Columbia outside of a maximum of 10 miles square in violation of Article 1, Section A, Clause 17. And that's exactly what they're doing. And in fact, there's a case. Let me see if I can find it. National Mutual Insurance Company. There we go. National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, 337 U.S. 582, 1948. It says Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power nationally covers those citizens even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. So remember the Kavanaugh hearings? Remember the Kavanaugh hearings? And they asked Kavanaugh, they said, can we go after a U.S. citizen in Afghanistan? And he said, yes, we can. Okay, so that's the Commerce Clause. And that's what they're doing, is they're assaulting you with the Commerce Clause, but that's a violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And a plenary power is a complete power. It's a dictatorship. Okay, this is Legal Information Institute, which is Cornell Law School, says plenary power, complete power over a particular area with no limitations. The term is often used to describe the commerce power of Congress. Under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, Congress is granted full power over interstate commerce. The court has found that states have not been able to pass laws affecting interstate commerce without the permission of Congress. So again, that's exactly what they're doing, okay, is they're bringing the District of Columbia outside of a maximum 10 miles square under the Commerce Clause in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Where's the contract? Where's the contract that I agreed to this? And that's where I go with it. And they don't want to talk to me.
Well, you know, Glenn, the other thing you brought in your video, which I have two court cases from years ago. I got to see if I can research and find them. But where an agency is an executive branch able to do commerce, and you brought that out in your video. You, I can't recall if you tied a court case with it or not. But the administrative branch is, is the executive agency to do commerce. Did I say that right?
I think you nailed it. Matter of fact, I do. I've got videos about that. I think, like, for example, I used to work at U.S. Airways again, and I worked in the engineering department. So I knew the VP. I knew VPs of engineering and maintenance, and I dealt with them all the time. I saw U.S. Airways Air Agency certificate. Okay. Well, think about that. That means that U.S. Airways is an agency of the Department of Transportation. And so then, and it's a private corporation. So then you think about that and you think about, well, what about Central Intelligence Agency? I'll bet you that's a private corporation too. I'll bet you somebody owns that thing. And I'll bet you, yes, they collect intelligence for the United States, but they're who knows what else they're doing with that intelligence. You see
Well,
what I'm
regardless, they're not there, like a police officer, whether it be the FBI or your local cop, they're not public servants. They're employees. The public servants are the ones that you elect. The ones that are elected are elected to serve and represent the people. Other than that, everybody else is an employee. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, like the CIA, the director probably has an oath of office. I'm sure he does, but I'll bet you most of the employees do not. Just like with the IRS, most of the employees do not. The commissioners definitely would. There maybe district directors would. I don't know.
Thank you. You have a good night.
I'll get that. Hold on a minute. Okay, go ahead.
But so a lot of them don't have an oath of office, but the boss does, and that's who you go after. And that's why I went after the. I always notice the U.S. attorney. If I think I'm going to have an issue with the IRS, then I'll send out notice and demands to the commissioners, all of them, and put them in the position that they got to honor their oath of office. And when you start, when you send out the first thing in my notice and demand says, I accept your oath of office. Well, if I'm a corporation, they have no duty to a corporation whatsoever. The only duty they have is to the people. The oath of office is to the people. And when I tell them I accept their oath of office, I'm telling them that I'm one of the people. You see what I'm saying? And
yeah.
So that creates a problem with them for them. And I also, what I've done is my mother did a bunch of genealogy and before she passed away. And so I have a pedigree chart that shows that I have ancestors that were here prior to the War of Independence. I've got a bunch of them that were here prior to the War of Independence on my mother's side of the family in particular. And so there's maxims of law that say that no civil law can violate right of blood. That makes me one of the posterity found in the preamble where it says, we the people do ordain and establish this constitution for ourselves and our posterity. And so and that creates a big problem for them, I'm telling you. And then there's another maxim of law: that which is created cannot be greater than that which created it. And so my ancestors wrote the Constitution. My ancestors fought the War of Independence. And so I just dump it on them. Matter of fact, I went and was filing criminal complaints into a federal case that got dismissed because I didn't pay the filing fee. I never pay the filing fee. And I was filing these criminal complaints into that case, and the judge took an interest and sent me an order of deficiency and told me I had to file a lawsuit. So anyway, so now I've filed, this is the lawsuit I'm working on right now. Is I call them a war crimes complaint because they're engaged in war crimes, and by declaration, 6th amended version. And so I filed 5 other ones, and she keeps kicking them back, saying they're too long. And so I've been trying to shrink them down, and I'm still haven't paid the filing fee. I'm not going to pay the filing fee. What I do is I send them a Form 1020. I don't know if you ever heard of Kerry Zolman.
Yeah.
Yeah, he that guy's brilliant. Anyways, he had a stroke and he's just not himself anymore. But before he had his stroke, he showed me his Form 1020, and that's brilliant for him. I use that for all sorts of things, and it basically says, no problem, I'll pay whatever you want to pay. Tell me what to pay. And only your attorneys can answer. And they'll never tell you what to pay. And so because they can't tell you to pay gold or silver coin, and they can't tell you to pay Federal Reserve notes because that'd be perjury of oath. They can't tell you gold or silver coin because it's not in general circulation. And so So once you put them into default, you send them you give them 15 days to respond, and then you give them another 5 days, and then your final notice of default, you failed to respond. I did that with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, and after I completed that process, they sent me a scheduling order.
Wow.
I don't know how much you know about the Court of Appeals and scheduling orders, but you get the scheduling order after you pay the filing fee.
Yeah. The well, that's interesting. I want to say on the screen, I got some of the jurisdiction court cases that I'm briefing in the habeas corpus I'm doing, and I'm far from being done. I'd like to be done 2 weeks ago, but I've been working on it for about 3 months now, and hopefully I'll soon to be done. Okay, I'm going to open it up. Does anybody have any questions? I think Fritz, you did. Fritz, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Coming up, Glenn. During this process of garnishment against your wages or whatever you were making at the time working for the air company, were you ever made whole? Did they ever give you your money back, per se?
No, they haven't. No, that's true. I haven't. But I left, and in fact, it was basically they forced me to leave because I mean, I wasn't. My attitude is you don't pay me, I don't work. So I left. And you're right. They haven't ever made me whole. So it was a hollow victory when I went to the Supreme Court. I've been there 5 times, and every time I sued the IRS twice actually, and the second time I went after them for the felonies, and both times it ended up the same way.
And Glenn, if somebody was to fill out a W-4, do you have a suggestion regarding that?
Well, I would fill it out exempt. I don't have any particular suggestions. I don't work W-4. I don't work W-2. I do corp to corp is the way I work, and so I haven't filled out a tax form in probably about 15 years.
Yeah. It's been a while. Okay, does anybody else have any other questions? Just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, I do. My name is Merlin.
Go ahead, Marilyn.
Glenn, what was the that case, McCall versus Maryland? How do you spell that McCall?
MCCULLOUGH.
MCCAL.
MCCULLOUGH.
Let me see if I have that in here.
That's actually a pretty well-known case because it's about taxes, and basically says that if you're accrued by the government, they can tax you, otherwise they can't.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Fritz. Unmute yourself again.
Chris, am I missing something, or should Glenn have something he can show on the computer so we can see and follow along with what he has? Because it sets in my brain. What you have, does that apply to what he's talking about?
No, well, what I have is just I'm just giving some no to answer your question. What I have here on the thing here is I'll go over this in a few minutes. Let's just and Glenn doesn't have screen sharing capability. He wasn't prepared for it, but during the week I will send his links and his email out. In fact, you can even join this group. And Glenn, do you have documents available for people? I know you authored a couple books. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wrote a book about Trump. What happened is it's called Trump, A True American Patriot or Not. It's on my website. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. And my YouTube channel is Sovereign Living. And there's a bunch of people that are pirating my name, But so you'll know that you have the right one if you have the scales of justice as the logo for my YouTube channel. Sovereignty International.fyi. Sovereignty International, all one word. SOB. You didn't put the S.
Oh boy, yeah.
There you go, FYI. And there's if you go there,
Okay, whose music's on?
If you go there, scroll down a little bit there, would you please? There you go. So the play videos, scroll up a little bit. There's my the book about Trump. But if you go to the free videos, those are links to YouTube videos because they're kind of hard to find on YouTube. And the read files is a bunch of, there's template documents. There's people that have asked me for, my PowerPoint presentations. And so what I do is I convert all of my PowerPoint presentations into PDF files. And so then, so that's the videos there, I think. Yeah, it is. And so those are all YouTube video links. And they're easier to find, and they're organized by different categories and things like that. And then on the free files, there are some Word files that you can download and use as templates for doing what you want to do. There's also PDFs, the presentations. I convert them into PDFs, and so the PDFs of those are also on the free files. What happened is Mike Blackwell asked me to write the book. He wrote the book about treason, okay? And that's Mike Blackwell's book. He's a Vietnam vet. He asked me to write the book about Trump. And it took me about 6 weeks to write it because all I did is I took a lawsuit and manipulated it and turned it into the book. And so it's 99% provable facts. It's about the deep state, who they are, where they came from. It's all in the law. And so and it talks about how I don't know if you know, Trump was invited to run. I think somebody in the iPhone there has a question.
Okay, let's see. Who has a question?
The iPhone.
Yep, that's me, I think. Yep, I'm an iPhone. My question was with the filing the jurisdiction claim, I did that, and the judge in the room, like you were saying, verbally gave me all the reasons why he had jurisdiction over me, basically. And so my next step, would it be a notice and demand, or would it be would you wait and file the Court of Appeals writ of mandamus?
Yeah, well, what you have to do is, first of all, you need evidence. Okay, so did you file something in their writing and you had the file stamp on it showing that you did file it? And then
I filed that, yeah.
Okay, good.
They didn't, though. They didn't refile like their answer.
No, that's okay. That's perfect. But do you have witnesses that can testify that or make a little affidavit saying that he said he had jurisdiction?
Yes.
Good, perfect.
I always had two, yes.
So then all I got to do is make a one-page affidavit, and it says that I was there. I saw her ask about jurisdiction, and I saw him say we have jurisdiction, and that's all I got to do. And then that's evidence. And you can now you file a petition for writ of mandamus with the Court of Appeals. I'm not sure which state you're in. Every state
Florida.
is going to be different.
Okay, Florida, but petition.
Florida, okay.
Yeah.
So what you got to do is file, and I think it's the Court of Appeals in Florida. I'm sure it probably is. Anytime there's a judge involved, it's the Court of Appeals. If there's a bureaucrat involved, then it might be a lower court. But usually, when judges are involved, it's the Court of Appeals or maybe even the Supreme Court in the state you're in. But so, like in Nevada, it says right in their rules that the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction on mandamuses for judges. But so, anyways, so what you do is you file a petition for a writ of mandamus, and if you send me an email, I'll send you a Word file. But you're probably going to have to make a lot of changes to it. But it'll have the basic, all the arguments and stuff that are there, and you got to look at the rules and make sure that you do it the way their rules want it. They always nail you on their rules.
Okay, I can do that. We've been connected a couple times. I've asked some questions, but I'll send you something. And I'll actually, if you want, I'll send you what I had filed for the jurisdiction. Just if you want me to, I think it might have been from your stuff.
Yep. Well, the important thing is you don't even have to be on point when you challenge jurisdiction. I mean, just the fact that you challenged it is they have to prove it. And they're all inferior courts of limited jurisdiction. They're all they're basically executive agencies is what they are. And
you know what he told me in court? The judge told me that maybe if I was the United Nations or worked for the United Nations or something, then maybe I would have some kind of argument. But basically, he justified it through multiple means that he had jurisdiction over me, even though my paperwork said to have it in writing and all this stuff, or have it the prosecutor approve it or the judge. But I was just saying they just went on and on about how, yeah, maybe if you were like the United Nations, but you're not, you're in our jurisdiction, like you're here in our area, our territory.
Because you're a U.S. citizen. That's why, because they got you as a U.S. citizen.
yeah, absolutely. That is Commerce Clause. It's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3. And
but I mean, how do they have me? I don't have a contract. I don't even have a driver's license. I don't have any kind of contract with them. And I've also
not to be disrespectful, we got a limited time, so I don't want to go into somebody's case too long. Okay.
Yeah, let's go on then. It's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead, go forward. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So there's no justice that'll go on in those courts. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves and pirates. Don't get me going. And so you know, sometimes I send out a nastygram to them, and I'm not going to say all the stuff that I put in there, but sometimes, and I got to tell you that I sent a notice and demand to the Bedford Chief of Police. And it was like about 20 pages, and it lays a foundation, tells them, it puts them into estoppel is what it does. It tells them that because under their codes they can claim good faith, okay, and that's because of the martial law, and so under their codes they can claim good faith, and it takes away their good faith and puts them in the position of having to honor their oath. Anyways, so what happened is about 9 months later, one of this Bedford pigs went and assaulted me, and so then what I did is I sent him a nastygram. And when I send out these nastygrams, I send it out to like everybody and their brother. So I sent it to him, and a carbon copy to the U.S. attorney, and a carbon copy to the FBI, and a carbon copy to the state police, and a carbon copy to the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, and a carbon copy to Donald Trump. And this was when Trump was in office. Anyways, and the first paragraph says, normally I say accept your oath of office, but you and I both know you have no intention of honoring your oath. So screw your oath. I used another word that starts with an F. But anyways, screw your oath, you lying, perjuring MFSOB. Okay, and you can imagine what MFSOB stands for. Anyways, and so then the second paragraph says, if you or your pigs want a piece of me, just name a date, time, and location. I'll come armed. We'll settle it for once and for all. You lying, perjuring MFSOB. And then the third paragraph says, I know you'll never take me up on that because you're cowards. Because the first thing you want to do is make sure I'm unarmed. So I have no way to defend myself, you lying, perjuring MFSOB. And there's like 20 pages of that, right? Anyways, so, you know, a friend of mine knows the mayor of Bedford. And I didn't know what had happened as a result of that. But this friend of mine knows the mayor of Bedford, and him and the mayor were talking one day. And the mayor said that the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement raided the Bedford Police Department, fired everybody in there, including that chief, and they couldn't even use their own jail anymore. And I can't tell you how many times that kind of stuff happens when I do this stuff. You gotta build a case. But when you build a case and you do it right, and you nail it down, you know, they have a problem. I can guarantee you, they have a problem. They don't want to talk to you. Last time I got stopped by the cops in again, this was in Texas. The cop, by the time the cop, it's a lady, by the time she gets my ID, she looks at it and says, Glenn Fearn, you're Glenn Fearn. And she gave me a ticket for a dirty license plate because it had been storming in Texas, and I had one of these temporary plates with a plastic cover on it, and so she probably couldn't read it, and she couldn't, obviously, and because I think that if she would have known that it was me, she wouldn't have stopped me. And so that's what you got to do, is you just got to break it off in their backside so much that they don't want. I bet you I got that cop fired too, because I started filing criminal complaints against her and her chief. And matter of fact, recently I went in Bedford again. They give me a ticket for an illegal lane change, and I filed suborning perjury charges and attempted murder charges against every member of the mayor, the judge, the prosecutor, every member of the city council, and this was like last August. And my friend of mine gets a newsletter from the Bedford city, and this was in September, and it said that the mayor got up and he spoke and at the city council and announced his resignation effective the next day. And so again, you know, they're never going to tell me what's going on with this stuff, but it's amazing how many times that kind of stuff happens.
Yep. Okay, let's see. It's 7:53. We got about 10 minutes. Does anybody else have any more questions? Fritz, you got your fingers up.
Where is Bedford?
Bedford, Texas is DFW. It's mid-cities area. It's actually pretty close to the DFW airport.
All right.
Thank you.
And okay, again, you see his website here. He's got a pretty intense website. Here's some read files here. And there's a hey man, here I am working on a hapius, and there's one there. Yeah, see, I'm presenting something to you guys I haven't even looked at yet. So I know what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of days.
Most
I'm
of
going to be
these,
looking at a lot of this stuff.
most of these are PDF files from the PowerPoint presentations that I did. Not most of them, probably about half of them though. And then there's other good files. There's some very good books and stuff like that. And there's some Word files, generic Word forms that you can use, like a corporate denial affidavit and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to add, a lot of people, like a guy that I used to work with for about 17 years, he was quick. He was real quick to start doing criminal complaints. First of all, again, I'm strictly talking IRS. If the IRS writes you a letter, they haven't committed a crime. If they have a right to ask anybody has the right to ask anybody anything. All right. But in the Privacy Act, they have to tell you if it's volunteer or mandatory, and what is the purpose of the question. Okay. Now, in a couple of next calls, I'm going to go over this, how they violate their own rules. And you can walk them, you can even hold their hand and walk them through them violating their rules. Now is time to do the criminal complaint against them. They have violated their rules, and you can go right to the secretary, or you could try the commissioner. But I showed somebody, I forget who it was, just the other day, that under Title 31 of the Treasury Department is shown that the Internal Revenue Service is an agency under the Treasury Department. And then under the rules of conduct, they have to answer your questions in writing. They have to answer truthfully and when required under oath. And they cannot falsify documents. So when they give you a document saying that you owe a certain amount, you don't argue it. If you argue it, you're jumping into their jurisdiction. Oh, I was unaware that I owed anything. Please provide me with a verified documentation that I owe this amount and from which it derives from. In addition, will you please give me your delegation of authority? I've done that all my life. Well, I'm exaggerating, for the last 30 years. And they've never taken any money from me. They never taken any property. They tried to convict me for criminal, charges. And I went in front of the grand jury and I said, look, I promise to pay all penalties and taxes if they just answer these questions. And I looked at the prosecutor, and the prosecutor was red in the face and told me to go home. Then later lied to the judge and told the judge that I refused to do what they wanted me to do. And the judge was trying to intimidate me. And calmly and respectfully, I said, Judge, on a couple of different occasions, I sent you a notice and a copy of the criminal complaint that I joined that went to Congress, but you seem to ignore that, but come complicit to their criminal activity. Now, if you read Title 18, Section 4, is misprision of a felony, that I'm required to give notice that a crime is being committed. And then under Title 18, Section 3 is accessory after the fact, which is what I was telling the judge. You're accessory after the fact that I've already told you a crime is being committed. She turned in her chair, and you can tell I disrupted her thing. And she said, well, you can handle that in June. Now, this was in February of 2007. She's already got me on a time belt, when I'm going to get in front, to get convicted. And yet the grand jury hasn't even indicted me yet. And she's telling me of people that I know that she sent to prison. I mean, I had her every which way, of criminal activity right there. Never heard from them in all these years.
Chappie?
And so I would submit, don't give them jurisdiction. Do not argue anything. Go ahead.
Chappie, the question I had was for Glenn. Did he sue his employer for the funds that they gave over to the IRS? Because remember, that is not a
well, he never got his money back, so I would assume no, he didn't.
So actually, I did. Actually, the case that went to the Supreme Court was involving U.S. Airways too. Matter of fact, they complained. They say that it costs like $2 million to go to the Supreme Court if you hire an attorney. And they actually complained to me one time. They said, you know how much this is costing us? Good.
Right. So what I'm saying is because that's what is it called? It's not a judicial order when they give your money to the IRS. It's what kind of order is it? I forget what it is. It's
administrative.
Right. It's administrative. It's not judicial. So without a judicial order, they can't take your property and give it to the IRS. So
I agree.
Did you sue your company and then they had to refund plus penalties? Did they do that?
No. And what happened is it went to the Supreme Court. And what happened is in the district court, they dismissed it. They just dismissed it right out of hand. And so it didn't take long to get to the Supreme Court. Because it went from, I was in Arizona, so that went from the district court to the Ninth Circuit and then to the Supreme Court. And so so it didn't take very long at all. That's just a standard habeas corpus form for the federal courts. But
Okay.
but it didn't take long to get to the Supreme Court because everybody just dismissed it out of hand. And so somebody asked in the question after I filed the attempted murder complaints with what was the pirates' reaction. What happened is you know, you got to understand what I'm accusing them of, because there's a case called the Amistad. I don't know, has anybody heard about the Amistad case?
Yeah, I remember the name. I don't recall what it's about.
Well, the Amistad was a slave ship in the 1850s where the slaves overpowered everybody and killed
That's right. They made a movie of that. Yeah.
That's right.
Amistad.
Yeah. And so what happened is they didn't know how to sail, so they didn't kill one guy, and they said, take us back to Africa, and he sailed in circles off the coast of Virginia until the U.S. Navy found him, and they brought him back and put him on trial for murder. And the case went to the Supreme Court, and there was two arguments. Either if they're slaves, they're no different than a dog or a cat, they're property, and a dog or a cat can't commit murder. And the other argument is that otherwise, they're free men and they had every right to do what they did. And the Supreme Court said they're free men and they had every right to do what they did, send them back to Africa. And so the argument is I tell them that they never lawfully arrest me. It's always an unlawful arrest. I have a right to resist an unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary. And they want to murder me. It's on YouTube where people resist these pigs and they get murdered. So it's attempted murder. They expected me to exercise my right to resist their unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary, so they'd have an excuse to murder me. It's attempted murder is what it is. And so, you know, if anything, that's why they don't want to talk to me. That's why that they won't stop me. You know, that's why that cop said, Glenn Fearn, you're Glenn Fearn. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, it is now the top of the hour. I'd just like to state that, you know, like I said, there's not going to be any more calls for the rest of the year unless something comes up. And Paul, I'd like to get Paul Hanson back on and Kelly Alexander, as well as tax court guy, Linsayer, Linsander. I'm going to have him on, I think, in the first or the second week in January. We had a lot of good response with these calls. So, and I'd like to invite Glenn back, but I also like to say, you know, I know, you know, people who know me. I'm always involved into something and trying to promote one thing or another. But right here, you see this big coin that I rolled in. There's nothing like silver. You're taking a dollar. You know, you're taking $30 $30 used to buy 30 coins. Today, $30 buys one coin. So that one coin is worth $30. And there's nothing like the retention rate of this group. I've been in now for 2 years and doing kind of well. But I want to start a program. See, I do a lot of research, as you can tell. I talk to a lot of people and I need support. I never really, you know, wanted to really charge anything like outlandish fees just to have a teaching like this, you know, $500, $1,000 or whatever, because I don't believe in that, but I believe in helping people. And I do. I want to give documents. I want to give a lot of my research, but my time has got to be valued as something. If I don't value it and you don't, then what the hell am I doing? So I would like like you to think about it. I'm not saying you have to, but everybody that has joins me in Quicksilver, if you get just one coin a month, that's $30. But you're not buying a shampoo or a candy bar or you know, or anything. You're buying money. If you can't afford it, get the coin and go sell it to a coin show or somebody. There's a lot of people that want to buy silver. I can promise you. Okay, a lot of people. I back in the early '90s, I had over about $30,000 worth of silver, and that saved my butt going through a couple years of hard times. So, the silver is valued. And so now what do I make off of that? I may make $1 a month because you're getting $30. And so that's the value. You're the one that's getting the value more than me. But if a bunch of you get it, then I may make $100 a month or $200 a month. So think about it, because I'm going to be sharing educational material and documents and everything to the Quicksilver. I'm going to start a Quicksilver group. And I already got a large Quicksilver group, but they're not into this. At least I don't think they are. I try not to mix the two. Anyhow, with that being said, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and all that. And
Chappie,
yeah,
I would just like to add one thing. You were saying that you're doing the habeas corpus for this guy. I would suggest you might want to consider a writ of coram nobis and look into it. And if you want to contact me privately, that's what I would suggest. You can use all the same arguments, and a writ of coram nobis. What it is it's bringing up facts. It's bringing up facts that weren't under review in the original conviction, so you can get it reopened. Is the point? Get the case.
Maybe you and I can take about an hour. I'll show you. I mean, the judge really, really has made a mistake. Hold on just a second. I'll call you right back. I'm on the phone. Okay. Let me. Okay, Fritz, go ahead, please. I got family waiting for me now.
One more final thought. When you mentioned the criminal complaint, Chris, against for Congress, was that Dave Merlin stuff, or were you planning on introducing new criminal complaint?
No, there was one. A criminal complaint doesn't. A criminal complaint's a criminal complaint, whether the janitor wrote it or Dave Merlin. Dave Merlin puts himself on a pedestal that nobody can write better than him. Well, a fifth grader can do just as much damage as somebody, a high priced, high thinking, self-proclaimed master, so to speak. Anyhow,
so what was applied before
Fred,
years ago, sent to Congress, still applies for today. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, Dave Merlin's criminal complaint covers everything.
Okay.
Now,
thanks, Chris.
Again, I don't want to really get into talking about Dave. He really left a burning trail. Anyhow,
Sorry, Chris.
With that being said, I'd like to again thank everybody for coming on the call, and email me if you have any questions. I will try to get back to you. I got a busy couple of days. My goal is to get Boggs out hopefully before Christmas. And I have yet to have a call about the Boggs case to actually show you how everything went wrong. But I got to put that together, whether it's for the habeas or the coram nobis. And Glenn, I have thought about the writ of error, the coram nobis, and go with that. But we'll see. So anyhow, God bless America, and thank you for coming on the call. This call is now officially over.